All right, welcome back. We continue live with the Ireland Contracting Lighting Sports Call on the Bordas and Bordas Hotline. I'm Bob Pompiani with you until 11 o'clock, and then please join us for KDK TV News at 11, followed by the #1 Cochran Sports Showdown. Again, Tim Benz, Andrew Filipponi, and Paul Zeiss will be on the program. We'll also talk about a topic that became popular after Game 1 of the NBA Finals, J.R. Smith meltdown mentally, and we liken it to a Pittsburgh meltdown of similar proportions. Who would that be in your book? Call us, let us know what you think. Let's go to line 2. Bert in Ross Traver. Hey, Bert.
Hi, Bob.
How you doing?
I was looking at the Steelers, and it seems to me like I don't think there's anything to Ben and Brown missing us OTAs. I think this season, all things being equal, is going to be a repeat of last year if they can, get enough out of those 2 free agents they signed and that second-round receiver, along with finding a replacement for Gerald Hawkins, the backup tackle.
Well, that's going to be.
What you thought about that?
That's a critical loss for them because he was emerging as the guy who's going to be the swing tackle, the primary backup after they lost Hubbard to Cleveland in the offseason. So, I think that's a big loss, and it happens at OTAs, which makes it even more painful. But you mentioned OTAs and the fact, I think it did hurt Le'Veon Bell not being there, not being in training camp, not being anywhere to the start of the season. In the case of Roethlisberger and Brown, I really don't have a problem because they're established and they're going to be at training camp. But I thought Le'Veon Bell's slow start was directly traceable to the fact that he had nothing coming into the start of the regular season, and I think it hurt him, and it was most notable in the Chicago game, week 3 of the season.
Yeah, I agree completely. I thought that that hurt them in the first part of the year. Like they were saying, they were kind of lucky to win a few games, but hopefully that second-round receiver can come around and they can get something out of those free agents. If they can do that and find a replacement for Hawkins, I think they're going to be pretty tough. They may be the team to beat.
Well, we'll see. A long way to go. I still have concerns about defense and about depth, with injuries being what they are and in a salary cap era, man. And depth is a hard thing to establish to begin with. And then you lose a couple of guys, and the Steelers got dealt a very difficult hand, as you know, when they lost Ryan Shazier, who, by the way, is on the fast track to an amazing recovery. I mean, I give that guy so much credit for being, to the point where he doesn't make excuses. He goes out, he does everything. He's very visible. He talks to people, and he continues to rehab like nobody's business. So if anybody can, and I would still advise him not to play again because I think it's extremely risky with the surgery he had, but just to have a healthy, productive life, he's going to have that based on how he's worked and try to rehab. Thanks. Appreciate that, Bert. Let's go out to Marilyn in Munhall. What's up, Marilyn? How are you?
Hi, glad to see you back. Thanks for taking my call.
Thank you.
I was wondering, I thought that Fleury only gave up 3 goals against Winnipeg, yet in the Stanley Cup Finals he's given up 10 goals in 3 games. Do you think he's just off to a slow start, or are the Capitals that good?
I think the Capitals are that good, and I think Penguin fans should probably look back and say, their ouster in the second round necessarily, Maryland, wasn't a bad thing. They may end up being the Stanley Cup champs. And the last 2 years, it was the Penguins who derailed them from getting there. They were good. I thought the Capitals, each of the last 2 years, made a case that they were as good as any team in hockey, but the Penguins were just that team that could beat them when they had to beat them, and they had the history. Now, this year was different. Washington, and I give them credit for one thing. Number one, they didn't just give up on Barry Trotz after last season, as a lot of people thought they should. Number two, they didn't trade their key components like a lot of people thought they should. Now, if they had lost in the first round of Columbus this year and they were down 2-0 after losing 2 at home, I think they would have made changes. But they were patient, and I think sometimes patient is a necessity, and it certainly is a virtue in sports. If you hang on, good things could happen. You may have to go through some ups and downs and criticism from home fans, but they've kept that team together, and it is a good team. They've added some youth to it. Chandler Stevenson's a good player. They brought him in. Jacob Verana's a very good player. They brought him in. And they're getting a good dose of what helped the Penguins, especially in the first-year run when they brought up Sherry and Rust and Kuhnackel, and at the time it was Wilson. So you need that, especially in a team that has a lot of high-priced players like the Capitals do. It's very similar to the Penguins. Line 2 we go. It's Brad and Punxsutawney. Hey, Brad, how are you?
Good, Bob. How are you?
All right, what's up?
I wanted to touch on the Penguins a little bit tonight. 2 points I'd like to bring up. One, I was listening to a NHL site. I can't remember exactly which one it was, but they talked to Malkin, And basically, he thought when they asked, where the Penguins went sideways this year, he thought they were a tired team at the end, just from the last 2 seasons, playing those extra month and a half, 2 months. Thought they, it kind of caught up with them this year in the playoffs. The other thing is, I hope, and you kind of stole my thunder talking about what the patience of the Capitals, I hope the Penguins don't blow things up too much, because the nucleus is there to come back and win a title next year again. And I just, I hope people don't panic. I hope they don't make a big trade and try to keep the nucleus of the team together. And I'll hang up and listen to what you have to say.
I think that's an excellent point, and that's exactly what I said about the Capitals. You're right, and the Penguins need to take the same approach. That doesn't mean you can't change a little bit, and they certainly did last season. But they had guys who were at the end of contracts, guys they couldn't pay, and they had to make decisions that way. They weren't going to bring back Nick Bonino. Cullen made a choice that was his own personal choice. You got Trevor Daley, again, money that they didn't want to allocate to him, and Chris Kunitz, same deal. So you're going to lose some. Every year is a different year, but I don't think there's a need for the Penguins to do that. I think, as you said, and I believe it, they're going to be one of the top teams as far as winning a Stanley Cup next year. They will be. They have the same nucleus. They should be well rested, and I do think that's legit. I think a lot of people who say it isn't just, don't follow it enough to know that. You talk to players about it, and I think they do tell you. They cram 4 seasons of hockey into 3 calendar years. That's hard to do. Most of the teams who accumulated that many games all were ousted earlier in the postseason this year. So to me, there's something to that, but I think they're still in a position to be a very good team. They don't have to radically do anything. But if a trade comes along, and we'll talk about Phil Kessel tonight on the #1 Cochran Sports Showdown, they may be inclined to look at it. I doubt it. I still think Kessel will be here. I think he should be here, and I think he should play with Evgeny Malkin. That's what I've said all along, and I'm not changing on that. Tony in the Hill District. What's up, Tony? How are you?
Hey, how you doing, Bob?
What's up?
I want to ask you. I just want to say something and ask you a question. The Pirates was doing so well when they first started out. Okay, now don't you think that they should put more money into the Pirates in order for them to get where they need to be? Because they had a $20 million cap from Kutchin, and I think the other guy, I forgot the other guy's name.
Derek Cole.
Don't you think they should put more money into the Pirates? Because they started out so well, and now it's just like they just started losing.
They started out well for a lot of reasons. Number one, their offense was off the charts. Number two, they feasted on a very bad schedule, and good for them, but a bad amount of teams, and they beat most of them. Like I said, though, however, Tony, I thought their season, if it reached a critical point that they didn't take advantage of, was home series against San Diego and Cincinnati. Combined, they go 2-5 against those teams at home. At the time, they were +9, 9 games over 500 when that first series against San Diego started. If they had gone 5-2 the other way, 12 games over 500, gives you a little cushion. And then, the ups and downs of a better opposition you'll be facing, now all of a sudden things have changed dramatically. I don't expect them to be a team that's going to just completely free fall. I do expect, however, them to not be able to get out of a 4th place hole. I just think that division is that good, and they're going to be hard pressed to do it. Yes, if you're asking me to spend money, if I'm the owner, yes, I do. My biggest criticism of the Pirates has been an owner who is not necessarily, separate the issues. He's a very good businessman. He's made a lot of money. That's his prerogative. But as a baseball owner, I think you owe it to yourself, to the city, to the team to put more money into it in a capless league. And if you don't, you're going to end up being – and listen, the market came down this year. They had a lot of good buys on the table that they could have gotten, I think, to help them. As it is, they still have a lot of talent. They have a lot of young pitching. If they could put it together, I think it bodes well moving forward. But this year is going to be a tough hole from which to dig. We'll take a break. 412-575-2600. More calls on the way right here live, Pittsburgh CW.